It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Tape Deck Media.
Hi there, I am Kelly Zimnikas, and I am the host of a brand new podcast called Holler and Wine. I'm a stand-up comedian, I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I genuinely love talking to people. And despite the fact that I do not care for the sound of my own voice, I've got a podcast now. So please come join us. We're going to have really good conversations. We're going to talk about cocktails, and I am going to give my guests a tarot card reading because why not? So join us on Holler and Wine. Hope to see you soon. Well, it's a podcast, so it's hear you soon? That sounds weird.
Welcome back to the podcast, Rattle Maniacs. I am, as always, your faithful host, Taylor Rattle, and this is the, I assume, hotly anticipated episode where I reflect on my 2 years as a full-time comedian, battler, quiz host, graphic designer. I wear too many hats. Before I crack into the discussion, quick plug. The only thing I've got on that's sort of out of the ordinary next week is I am going to be covering the Beats by Bingo event on Thursday at the Retropolitan. So if you would be wanting to come along to a Beats by Bingo gig, but you've been unable to make the trip out to Rangiora, you've got one right in the CBD. So head along to the Retropolitan's page on Facebook, and I'm sure they'll have all the details. I believe it starts at 7 o'clock. But yeah, go and check that if you're interested in coming out. Right, so the episode, we're doing the thing. We're doing the re-evaluation. It was my second anniversary of the sort of last day of my previous corporate job on the 4th of May, 2 years ago. And to be honest with you, I've been putting off recording this evaluation for like the last couple of weeks because, like, frankly, everything sucks at the moment. I sort of can't think of another way to put it. Is just, man, it is tough out there for so many people. I mean, myself included, I suppose. I'm probably not in as bad of a position as a lot of people have, because at the end of the day, I always look at it like, you know, if everything goes wrong for me, like it's just me that sort of, you know, I don't have children or pets or, you know, anything like that. I've got nobody depending on me is the main thing. So I can sort of fail with impunity. And yeah, I had really badly wanted this second anniversary reflections to be a more positive note, but everything at the moment is kind of tainted by this, the stress, the kind of, everyone's really feeling the financial squeeze at the moment. There's a lot of culture war shite on in the news at the moment. So I thought, rather than me just rabbiting on, what I would do is I've written down a list of things I'm grateful for and then a list of lessons learnt. And I'm hoping that will give me a little bit of structure rather than just complaining for 40 minutes. So we'll just get into it, I reckon. The first thing on my list that I'm grateful for is just the fact that I've managed to pay all of my bills for 2 years off the back of telling jokes, reading quiz questions, playing musical bingo, a little bit of graphic design. It's a weird feeling. It's not as major as I think it would have been if I had gone straight from, I don't know if you heard that beeping now, but that was the dishwasher. If you heard two beeps in the background, that was the dishwasher finishing. But the jump from working 9 to 5 to freelance was not, it wasn't the first time I've made this jump, let's just say. And it is a very satisfying moment when you go and purchase like food, or you know, as satisfying as paying rent can be. When you do that with money that you made off the back of your art form, it is a very satisfying purchase to make, for lack of a better word. It would have been more significant if it was the first time that I'd sort of done so off the back of freelancing, but the fact of the matter is I tend to jump between freelancing and employed payment work, every 3 or 4 years apparently. So I'll be very curious to see how I feel at the end of next year, if I've managed to make it through still being a self-employed entertainer, and then whether I'll be kind of missing the regular paycheck and sort of stability that comes with a sort of 9-to-5 job. I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the podcast, but there is definitely pluses and minuses to both sides. Like, I feel like for me, I'm like a sheep that keeps jumping between the paddocks and thinking the grass on the other side is always greener. Like when I was working the corporate job, I still remember this sort of despair of getting out of the car in the parking lot, walking across the parking lot to go inside the office when it's just this beautiful sunny day. And there's definitely something to be said for the freedom that comes from being self-employed. You have to work pretty hard to make sure that you're still blocking yourself out some downtime. I think that's generally the thing people struggle with, is feeling like they need to be hustling 24/7 when they're working self-employed. I have noticed that this gets easier to do. It gets easier to switch off the older I get. Like I don't have as much trouble sitting on the couch and watching a new episode of Severance or something like that as I used to when I was kind of in my early 20s. And there is definitely that underlying feeling of like, I guess the thing with a 9-to-5, if you're working 40 hours a week, it's really easy to compartmentalize that as like the job's going to be there on Monday when you get back into the office. And I think when you're a self-employed person, you feel like everything's the well is going to run dry someday, or the tap is suddenly not going to come on when you turn the handle. So that's something I maybe need to discuss with my therapist, Logan. We do a show together called Good Advice, Bad Advice. To be honest, though, Logan's self-employed as well, and so he'll probably be like, nah, I feel you, man. So that's the first thing I'm grateful for. I'll do a couple of lessons learnt, because I've got a lot more. This will very quickly clue you into how hard of a year it's been. Is I've got a lot more lessons learnt than things I'm grateful for. So the first lesson learnt is that success is not going to make you happy. And this is a huge one. This could almost be considered the artist's folly, I think, is that in our head, and I heard Tom Segura talking about this with someone, that the tragedy of this kind of mindset is that comedians all think that we're going to be the exception to the rule. And the really sad thing about it is that, conversely, a lack of success will absolutely make you unhappy. So it's this weird thing, because I think we're self-identifying the fact that we're unsuccessful is making us unhappy. So we think, well, if I get a little bit of success, then that'll fix that problem. That'll fill that hole in my soul. And bear in mind, this is coming from someone who has only had a small modicum of success. This realization came aboard when I was experiencing my first Christopher Luxon reel blowing up. I was sort of not just in a sort of economical sense, but just personal life. I don't really talk too much about my personal life, but I've had several kind of things happening in the personal life that's also probably compounding with the state of the world. And I also made the horrible mistake of watching the TV show Adolescence the day it happened. So I sort of was bombarded with this kind of combination of personal life, kind of not sadness, but you know what I mean, sort of negativity, the economic status of the world weighing on me, the fact that I just watched this very sad, very uncomfortable TV show. And when you have something start to pop off, you kind of think to yourself like, oh shit, is this me? Is this the beginning of me like, am I going to be, a big dog, a kind of, not a celebrity, I don't think you could, well, maybe. But you have all these thoughts in your head where you don't want to get your hopes up. And especially if you're like me and you've been posting content for about 3 years now and have sort of had no response or kind of ambivalence towards it. When you suddenly start to see people paying attention to it, it's actually a weird feeling because it's quite overwhelming. And years ago, I was reading James Acaster's book, and I feel like I'm repeating. I apologize if you've heard this story already. I feel like now that I've just started talking about it, I feel like I have talked about this before. But James Acaster's book, he talks about being really depressed in 2016, and like I sort of, I've gained a lot of sympathy for James just in this last year because when I read the book, I was like, negative success, had nothing going on for me. And I thought to myself, how irresponsible of James to let himself be unhappy when he's living the dream. However, this is one of those things that it's like when people join Alcoholics Anonymous, like they always say, like it has to be, you have to kind of do it when it's time, or it's like you can't force anyone to do it. They just have to do it themselves when it's time. And it was, I think, realizing that success isn't going to bring you happiness is one of those things you have to actually just experience it to understand what people say when they mean it's not going to suddenly make you happy. And again, very aware that this is, I don't really consider myself to be successful. But what I mean is, even just that little taste of something going kind of viral was enough for me to realize that is not going to fill the hole in my soul that I'm trying to fill with comedy. So the second lesson I've learnt, and I've kind of reiterated this before in the past, but you are going to be told no more times than you can count. So the best thing to do is just get used to it. Now that's a very cynical, it's a very cynical way to look at things, I'm aware, but it's the fact of the matter. In something like show business, especially when you're not a big star and you're just like me running events with local pubs and things like that, it's all about the bottom line for them. And I can probably talk about this without naming anything, but I went in and had what I felt was a really good meeting with a venue. And I thought we were going to go ahead and run an event there, sort of regular event. And my point of contact seemed like they were keen. I met like the manager and a couple of other people, and they all seemed keen. And a couple of months went by. They obviously had to get it through kind of like upper management or I don't know how many layers of management they had. And then it turns out in the end, they went with another provider. So, ultimately was probably a financial decision. Maybe the other provider could give them a cheaper, what they felt was the same service, but cheaper. I don't know. It could be any number of things. That meeting could have gone not nearly as well as I think it did. I was actually just talking about this with a friend. We were sort of trading war stories back and forth about dating and that kind of thing. And without giving too much personal information away, she'd just been on a date with a guy that was really punishing, let's just put it that way. Very, very unself-aware, I think, is the main takeaway that we figured. And I remember thinking to myself as I was listening to the kind of her, like, hearing it from her point of view, I was like, oh God, like I wonder if I've ever been the punisher on the other side of a date. And I felt like it went really well, but then from her point of view, it was not that. And so that was what I was thinking with this this venue that I had met with. Maybe I didn't come across as well as I thought I did to them. But that was just a recent rejection. Like, you're always being told no thank you in entertainment. And it's not even like a permanent no. It's just kind of like, there are so many shows, there are so many projects, TV shows, podcasts, everything like that, that you can't be on everything. And conversely, I've had to get a lot better at just blatantly telling people no. Like, I book several comedy shows, and sometimes maybe it's the comic not reading the original email with the instructions as to like when you'll hear if you're on the gig or not, but they'll hit me up and say, hey, am I on this spot? And back in the day, I would have really like people pleased and been like, oh yeah, not this one, but I'll try to prioritize you for the next one. But I've gotten a lot better at just being like, nah, sorry, not this time. So that's it. Yeah, I guess that's the lesson, is you're going to be told no a lot, and you're probably going to have to tell people no a lot. I should amend that one, actually. All right, another thing that I'm grateful for. Like I've said, I've begun to get some response from the content I'm creating, mainly the sort of Christopher Luxon impressions. Well, I did one the other day that was all 3 members of the current government on a road trip together. And this is one that I have mixed feelings about. You always say to yourself, like, you can never predict what the thing that's going to catch on with people is. And I've mentioned before my kind of bemusement, is that the word? Bemusement, about the fact that these have caught on so much, because I didn't realize, I don't know, how good of an impression I do of him. And I'll talk about this here. I feel like I'm constantly having to evaluate what I value more when I create content, because like if you talk to people that know things about like, how to kind of get your work out there and get people appreciating your work, it's like they always say you just got to do the thing, the thing where the process to create it is enjoyable, and then eventually the people that like it will find it and they'll kind of come around. And it's something I have to sort of something I wrestle with when I think about creating another one of these Luxon impression reels, because like all the comments, how do I explain this? It's like a lot of the comments on it are saying that, oh man, this guy's so funny, you're so good at this, blah, 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 all this kind of thing. And these are like exactly the sort of comments that you want to get as a comedian. People saying, oh, you're very, acknowledging you're very good at this thing that we like watching you do. But then I also have to look at it and I'm like, but it's me playing a character essentially. And so I always think to myself, like, do they like what I do, or do they just like this particular impression? And like, if you look at the numbers of all my reels and all my TikToks, you'll kind of see there is a trend here that like the stuff that maybe I think is really funny doesn't really get the sort of views and attention that these political, I don't know, Logan has told me to stop calling them political things, because they're not really that political. I definitely, like, you can tell from my content that I'm left wing, but I'm kind of an idiot, so I don't really know how to critique policy well. I just kind of throw things in there that I've seen on the news and then sort of try to make it make sense with like the kind of the policies that I either don't like or would like to see put into government. And it just comes back to, it almost feels like a little bit of a deal with the devil, where I'm like, do I make this reel that's like something that I think is really funny and it's niche and it's whatever, or, and is probably going to get 300 views, or do I make another political satire thing that's going to do well and it's going to get you a whole bunch of new followers, but then also like you're sort of confused as to why it does so well. I don't know. I don't know if this is making any sense to you or not, but that's what goes through my head when I think about making content these days. Is I feel like I almost have to have a choice between doing other stuff or doing the stuff that like far and away gets the best response out of anything that I've made. My main hopes are, for one, my main hope is that this government's not going to get back in the next election. So by that point, I think everyone will have cooled off and, doing Luxon impressions is not really going to be like in the culture anymore. So my hopes are there that enough people discover me through these, that when Luxon's not like think about like Todd Miller, we don't even talk about him anymore. So my hope is that enough people discover me off the back of these, that when I continue to post like other reels, they go, oh yeah, I like this guy, I'll stick around. Alrighty, another couple of lessons that I've learnt. So this first one, therapy is worth the money. I've mentioned a few times that I've seen Logan for a session of therapy that was to sort of talk me through some of the anxiety I was feeling over these reels popping off, and it really does help. Like, it's Logan himself even says it's just him asking good questions. So if you can afford it, I highly recommend it, especially if you find a good one. I don't know what a bad I don't know what a bad therapist would be like, but I think you want to find the ones who help you discover for yourself what the issue is. Like, we've unpacked with Logan that I have a very inflated sense of responsibility. I always think that that I'm the only one that can, and then also that means I should be the one to fix like this or that. Like, especially when we have issues in the comedy scene, I always kind of I'm like, oh, it's got to, if not me, then who, kind of thing. So I've been working on trying to be less white knighty, for lack of a better word, I suppose. And then also accepting that like most people are probably not paying as much attention to me as I worry they are. So yeah, therapy, worth the money if you can get a good one. And I think Logan is a good one. Next lesson is one that I've heard a bunch of times in the past, but this term is idle hands are the devil's plaything. And I think I'm doing a lot better mental health-wise now, but there was definitely like a stretch, maybe like a month ago, when I was not doing as well. I sort of realized the reason for this is like, I work in the evenings, so in theory, I could kind of do nothing from the time I wake up until the time I have to leave to go host these events. I mean, obviously, I do have stuff like that I need to do in the days. Like, I do a lot of freelance graphic design, and there's always kind of admin and stuff that needs to be done. But it's pretty easy for me to just be bumming around the house all day on my own, and I think that's not good for that's not good for you. I think is that what they call cabin fever, is when you're kind of you're not isolation is not good for us. So I've started taking small steps to just ensure that I'm kind of doing something like throughout the day, keep my hands busy so that the devil can't use them. I've never understood what that what that phrase meant. Like, is it if my hands aren't doing something, the devil can like possess me and he can take control of just my hands and then he can do nefarious things with it. So I'll tell you, this is the one little thing that I've started doing. If you're thinking to yourself, boy, that Taylor Ruddle, he lives a good life. I sure would like to imitate what he's up to. I think you've got to figure out what authority you respond to, and I think mine is my calendar. That's if something's in my calendar, I will generally do it, I think. So what I've done is I've made a new calendar. I'm sort of looking at this a little bit like a robot. You have the 3 laws of robotics. I've got a calendar in my calendar. I've got a sub-calendar, whatever you call it, called non-negotiable directives. And so every day at 12 o'clock, I've got a chore around the house that I need to do. So Monday is... why is Monday not... I need to fix that. My calendar's slightly broken. Monday is I need to clean the toilet, which is the house toilet. Not specifically just the toilet, but like the bathroom and the toilet, I guess. I've got to clean that, which is it's a great way to start my week off, isn't it? Then on Tuesdays, I got to clean the bathroom, which I did yesterday. I started this yesterday. Wednesdays, I got to clean the kitchen. I just finished that, and you definitely start to feel the kind of I don't know if it's like a Jordan Peterson thing where he says you got to make your bed to kind of if your bedroom is cluttered, then your brain is going to be cluttered. And I'm definitely feeling the effects of having a nice clean bathroom and a nice clean kitchen. So the time of this recording, tomorrow, it is the bins day. So I've got a little area that we kind of store our garbage before we take it out to the bins, the recycling. It also gets a little bit dirty, so I'll probably hoover it. And then Fridays, I've got to vacuum the house. So that's like a good hour out of my day for all of these chores. I've also decided that I need to schedule my exercise. So I've got boxing on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm going to try and go for a little walk somewhere. And I'm hoping that because it's in my calendar, I will actually obey this and be doing them. I'm thinking about applying for some kind of volunteering. I've seen that you can do a sort of community patrol or community watch where you sign up for it and then you give them like a few. And I think that could be kind of interesting to do. I believe it's just kind of driving around, and then you also do like some community events and the like. So I'm thinking about applying for that, and that would be like my Mondays kind of filled up. More to come on that, I guess. I just I'll keep you in the loop. Alrighty, the next thing I'm grateful for is I'm beginning to feel more connected in my communities, and so this one is sort of it goes alongside the success is not going to make you happy, and that from what I can tell, and from people that I know, they seem to agree that this is the way, is that actually happiness comes from community, friends, family, things like that. And I've sort of alluded to this. There was a bit of a schism in the Christchurch comedy up until kind of last year, but we've been able to kind of mend a lot of those bridges. So I'm now kind of cool with maybe like 99% of the comedians in Christchurch. And it's been cool. Like there's a lot more gigs on at the moment. A lot of us are doing sort of like we're crossing over and doing each other's spots like we weren't up until then. And it's definitely something that's great for your mental health as community. I guess if nothing else, just to remind you that you're not alone more than anything. The other thing that's been great is the quiz nights. And this is one of the things I missed about going to Toastmasters clubs, is that you would meet just like good people at Toastmasters. You'd meet normal people that kind of had their life together. And there was a fella, I don't think I mind me mentioning his name, Tony. He and I used to go to the Toastmasters together. And Tony's one of those guys who would like make things happen. He would organize, he would be like, hey, we're going to go watch the UFC at the Robbie's in Riccarton. If you're keen to go, then, I forget, we sent him, maybe it was the movies or something. We had to go see the movies. He just made things happen. And man, when you find people like that, you got to hang on to them. Unfortunately, he moved to Auckland, I think. So haven't seen him in several years, but if you find someone like that, make sure you appreciate them. And so through the quiz nights, I've just been, you have like regulars who come along, you see them kind of every week. You get to know them a little bit, how you doing, that kind of thing. And like, I remember one time a lady asked me, it was after I'd taped my special, I was promoting it in the slides up until the end kind of thing, and she came up and asked how the taping went, and it was like, yeah, it's just this weird kind of like, it was a really heartwarming moment for me where I was like, wow, somebody actually remembered. So if you're an artist feeling isolated, I think that's normal. I think a lot of art is very individual, unless you're like, there is like professional wrestling, it's a collaborative thing, maybe dance troupes, theater, a lot of that is collaborative, but then, maybe you're like a writer or a painter or a photographer, like a lot of that can probably be quite isolating. Which actually leads us on to my next point quite well, is I've sort of cooked up this idea for a Christchurch Creatives Network. We've got our first mixer in a couple of weeks. Please don't just turn up to it. Head along to candocomedy.com/mixer if you want to know like more, if you're an artist and you want to know more about how to sort of get involved with it. Mainly because I just never saw any collaboration between artists of different disciplines. Like I think there's like a poetry clique, there's like a writers clique, there's the comedians clique, there's theater, but a lot of these communities weren't overlapping at all. So yeah, the response to it has been really good. I think I got triple the amount of signups than I had space for our first mixer, and I've got a really good feeling that it'll be hopefully a source of community and kind of like, something that people can attend and they feel less alone in the world. I'm actually just now realizing as I say this, I really should apply for some Creative Communities funding for this, because you could definitely argue that this is a good thing for your mental health. So if I remember, I'm going to apply for some for some funding for that. Okay, next, lessons. Crumbs make crumbcake. This is something that Matt Cardona, the wrestler, said. He was fired from WWE, maybe 5 years ago or something now. And then he just went on to have like the biggest run of his career on the independent circuit. And he often says that crumbs make crumbcake. So he too has like several podcasts. He's got like action figure lines. They sell action figures. He's got all this merch. He'll basically sell everything. And he just kind of said, yeah, like crumbs make crumbcake. It's something I've actually learnt that a lot of people with seeing signups for this Christchurch Creatives Network, because I assumed it was going to be, hello, I'm a writer. Hello, I'm a dancer. Hello, I'm a whatever. But it's actually been people that are like me and do like 12 things. So it's been a lot harder to categorize than I thought it was. But it's also probably kind of a state of how hard it is to make a living as an artist, and that you have to kind of do everything. The next one that I heard is kind of dark or kind of bleak, but it was somebody said something to the effect of no one's coming to save us. And I've also heard it said as like the cavalry is not coming to save you. And that line there kind of helps me when I'm feeling paralyzed by decision, and like the idea that you can't just sit on your hands and everything's gonna kind of happen for you. It's the idea that you actually you've got to make you got to get out there and make moves and what have you. And it's just one that I tend to remind myself of if I'm sort of feeling like I'm spinning my wheels a bit or I'm kind of stuck. Like quite often the move is that you just have to start making moves. I think this is not a good reference to make nowadays with old Kevin Spacey, but there was a bit in House of Cards where Frank, the main character, he's been criticized for a decision that he made, and he basically says he's like, sure, like it was, not a great decision, but as a leader, I have to be decisive. And that's always kind of stuck with me, and it feels in line with this no one's coming to save us line, because it's like you have to make moves and you have to be decisive in those moves. No one's just going to offer you the opportunities that you want. I guess you could also, directly related to this is the phrase, ask and you shall receive. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Like, you have to keep pushing and see what you can get. The next one here, and this is kind of it's sort of related to the response I tell people when they ask what it's been like to do this full time, is I often say, yeah, look, if you're planning on doing this yourself, make sure that you can predict a sudden and unexpected economic downturn. And if you can do that, then you should be fine. So the lesson is you can never predict what's going to happen. Curveballs will constantly be coming your way. And I think this is something I'm still coming to terms with myself. I've been pretty vocal in my criticism of the current New Zealand government. But at the end of the day, I don't really know whether the state of the economy is directly I don't know whether it's we're just feeling the aftershocks of the COVID pandemic. It's entirely possible that we would be still really taking it under the Labour government. And that's kind of that's sort of a political trap, I think. Hopefully, we don't want to get caught. We don't want to get too stuck under the belief that everything happening right now is because of the government that's currently in power. But I guess what I'm trying to say is when I quit my last job, it was a different government in power, and it felt like things were shaky but going okay to me. Again, I'm probably in a pretty privileged position compared to a lot of people. I definitely make less than living wage, but just through living skint, I sort of get by. But I don't know, it seemed like things were going okay. And now it feels like they're not going okay. And we're selling a luxury product, being an entertainment, so of course the first thing people stop spending money on is luxury goods when they're like tight financially. And at the time, I didn't realize that we were going to have such a swing in the government. So it was not exactly something I can beat myself up and put it this way. I'm trying not to blame. I'm trying not to blame it on the government changing for this sort of bad economic times we're in. But then I also want to say, at the time, I couldn't predict that things were going to change really quickly. Is kind of what I'm trying to say here. And then to get to the root of this sort of lesson, it's that like you're never going to have everything's not going to go well all the time. You're never going to have just a hell of a run where everything goes to plan and nothing ever goes wrong. So what I'm trying to say here is that like you've got to build a little bit of resilience into your plan for when things go wrong or you're dealt a curveball. I mean, if you're an adult and you're paying bills, you'll know this, that just, the expression when it rains, it pours. When your car starts making a weird rattle and you're like, oh, that sounds expensive to fix, that's also when you're going to have a toothache come on and you're going to have to go to the dentist. And that's when your dog is going to start making a weird noise and throwing out. Like it's, life is just a money pit. It's just one thing after another. And I myself fall into this trap of thinking like, well, once that's out of the way, then everything should be okay. And then hopefully nothing else will ever go wrong and I should be okay. So I guess just, especially when you're self-employed, I guess it's like, don't waste your energy being upset about the stuff you can't control or couldn't see coming, which is a lesson that I need to take myself. But now that I've written it down, I hope I'll take it on board. The next thing I'm grateful for is the podcast has been a very good networking tool. It sure ain't making me any money, I can tell you that. But it's been a really good way to meet people from other parts of the country in comedy, different disciplines, just different, like I've sort of got in touch with the Plains FM crew through the podcast. And just in general, it's like it's like if you're lonely, man, start a podcast. That's you'll meet. And the thing is, you're going to think it's hard to find guests for your podcast. It is not. I've had the exact opposite problem. I've had a backlog of guests for the last 2 years that I still haven't managed to work my way through. So yeah, if you're struggling for company, start a podcast, man. The next lesson is even with a dream job, you're still going to have shitty days. And I think this was another fallacy that I figured like, oh, once I'm a full-time comedian, I'm never going to be grumpy at work. I'm going to have, no, you're still going to have hard days at the office. Just off the top of my head, you're dealing with members of the public. People drink when they're at bars. You run into some battler at the bar who won't leave you alone. Tech doesn't work. This cable's broken. You forgot this, or you have a bad set at comedy. The jokes just and just completely through things that you can't predict. Like, oh, Electric Avenue's this weekend, so for the 2 week, the week before and the week after, you're going to have no turnout because people are saving their money for Electric Ave, and it's like. It's just you. I guess. Don't be delusional in thinking that like it's all going to be roses once I go full time, and no. You're still going to have hard days at the office, and that's fine. That's every job. Like I'm sure, even like I don't know, even Brad Pitt is like filming a movie and he's like, oh man, I got to fly 18 hours to Morocco to, like even the biggest movie stars in the world probably have days when they hate their job. The final thing I'm grateful for is my second comedy special was received very well, nearly at 10,000 views. And by that I mean it's at 9,100 views. The podcast, I was really happy. I think it's probably my magnum opus so far. It's the best comedy thing I've created so far. And it's pretty much there's not a heap of comments on it, but like pretty much all the comments are positive. So yeah, it's an achievement. I'm proud of it. The last two lessons before we wrap up are it's a quote from my friend Mikey Lee. He started a business kind of around the same time that I went full-time as an entertainer. And the phrase he said was, when it's going good, it's never going as good as you think it is. And when it's going bad, it's never going as bad as you think it is. I guess this goes alongside the life is going to be throwing curveballs at you till the day you die one. But man, it's like I've just gone through a week where I had a lot of invoices pending. My rent was due to come out. I sort of didn't, I had to fill up the car. Groceries are freaking expensive at the moment. And I just thought, like, I genuinely was losing sleep just waiting, it was a timing thing. I was hoping all these invoices came through before all the payments had to come out. And thankfully, a few days later, everything looks good. But it really is a roller coaster. You do, and even though I'm aware of this, like when it's going bad, it's never going as bad as I think it is. I guess you can also take from that as like, yeah, probably everything's going to be okay. And I think the main reason that this quote has stuck in my mind is, I think the tattoo girlies on Instagram have that tattoo that says "This too shall pass." I see tattoos of that quite a bit. And that's kind of, I guess that's it in a nutshell, is like, yeah, it's sure, things suck, but it's only temporary. Unfortunately, things are great too, and that also is only temporary. The final lesson, and this is something an old coworker of mine said to me, and it's sort of relevant to my situation at the moment, is we were talking about punk music. Specifically, I remember talking about the Green Day album American Idiot, and man, do you remember when the days where we thought Bush was as bad as it could get there? He said something to the effect of George Bush was terrible for the world, but he was great for punk because there was all this amazing punk music that came out of George Bush's presidency. And in a way, I think that's been true of a lot of art forms. Like you think about even before this, whatever, George 2000s or whenever it was, you look back at the early days of punk and they were all rebelling against something as well. And so I guess the lesson I've taken away from here is that things might be falling to bits. A lot of people are struggling at the moment. However, the way that I've been sort of channeling this into some of this political humor that I've been experimenting with, one of the things that makes it so gratifying to do is that it feels like it's a real cathartic watch for so many people, because this was the funny thing about doing it, is like no one really does political impressions in New Zealand. It's not I'm I'm pretty much the greatest political impressionist comedian in New Zealand right now. Almost made it through that with a straight face. And I think maybe one of the reasons they caught on so much is that they articulated something that a lot of people had been frustrated with for a long time. And that's one of the beautiful things about art, is I think it can express things that you make things based on a feeling, and then other people can point to that and say, that's exactly what I've been feeling. And some of you might be listening to this and thinking like, wow, Taylor just understood the point of the point of art. But I don't know. Shut up. It's a revelation that I've had. And this is someone who has not done particularly deep comedy material or jokes. Like I'm a pretty corny comedian. And yeah, I don't know. It's just a lesson that, like, from really crappy times can come some amazing art. Like, I mean, American Idiot, that song is a banger. Still good today. I still believe it's in my playlist. Okay, well, we got through it. Thank you for sticking with me if you've listened all the way through. That has been my the second anniversary of me being full-time comedian. This next year is going to be an interesting one. I, at this stage, don't think I'm going to have to go back to getting a job this year. However, we're only halfway through this current government's term, so things could be about to get a whole lot worse. I'm hoping they don't. I'm hoping that things stabilize and we make it through it. But we'll wait and see, I guess. Apologies for all the negativity. I genuinely was trying to do this as positively, that's a hard word to say, positively as I could. But man, life just imitates art, doesn't it? What you're feeling bleeds through into whatever you're creating. So thank you for listening. Hit me up on all of the social media channels at Taylor Ruddle Comedy. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram if you want to see some of these political reels that I'm making. I'm currently working on a solo show called Taylor Ruddle Pundertaker. I sort of put it together very slapdash and kind of like just let's see what happens. And people seem really excited for it. So, I don't know, maybe that's going to be my next year's touring show. Maybe it'll be the one that I film next. I'm not really too sure what we're gonna do with it. But I'm running it on the 13th of June at the Good Times Comedy Club. You can get along to their website, or Facebook is probably easier. Go get your tickets from there. It's going to be about an hour of one-liners and some slideshow jokes. I'll probably end up doing the Chris Luxon impression at some point during the show. Alrighty, thank you for listening, Ruddle Maniacs. Those of you who have been listening along for these 2 years, your support means the world to me. I appreciate you coming back every week. I hope this helps you get through your morning a little bit. And I really hope to be talking to you again in a year's time on my 3rd year anniversary as a full-time battler. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Ruddle Me This. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. You can find me on social media at Taylor Ruddle Comedy on all the major platforms. You can also join patreon.com/Taylor Ruddle Comedy for free, which gets you access to all sorts of extras and behind the scenes content, as well as allows you to communicate directly with me and let me know what you think of the show. Tune in again next Monday for another episode of Ruddle Me This, and until then, Ruddler out.
This has been a Tape Deck Media production. Thank you for listening.
Hey Ruddlers, I joined a group of podcasters that we are calling the Trailer Alliance, a group of podcasters that share each other's trailers at the end of the episodes and generally support each other. So at the end of each episode for the next few weeks, I'm going to be playing a trailer of one of the members of the Trailer Alliance. And here's one of them now. I hope you like it.
Welcome to the Evil Twins podcast. I'm Paige.
And I'm Arden.
And this is the trailer. We are two sisters, not twins.
We are not twins.
Who have decided to start a podcast about the hit Paramount Plus show, Evil. So why did we start this podcast?
We started watching Evil during the pandemic when we were desperate for anything to pay attention to other than the four walls of our apartment.
It's just a fun sister activity.
Yeah.
And you guys have to pay the price.
Exactly. And, you know, everyone else in our lives has been paying the price for most of time. Mm-hmm. So it's time to spread the suffering to people who aren't related to us.
This is the honkiest operation about the honkiest show that's ever been created. All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. And we're looking forward to watching with you.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No